Hi, I'm Kathy Bradick, and I'm the founder of the Turban Project. We make turbans and headwear for cancer patients or patients that lose their hair because of medical treatments, and these are free. We have volunteers all over the United States that help us prepare them. If you sew for us, you do get the material pre-cut, ready to sew, and we will keep you supplied. And it's been requested that we do a video so that you know how to sew them, even though we send you the instructions. You can find the patterns and the instructions on our website, www.turbanproject.com. Now, it's just two pieces. This is the head piece, and this is already pre-cut. And this is the band that we'll put on after we've sewn the head piece. So it's only two pieces. It's a very forgiving pattern, very easy to do. It's soft, stretchy material, and I start with the hem. It's a 2-inch hem, and you can prepare it either by ironing it 2 inches, which is my preference, or pinning it, or having a measuring tape and you measure it 2 inches as you go. So we start with a zigzag stitch, and you're going to slightly pull the material as you run it under the presser foot, and that way it stretches. And that's because when the patient puts it on their head, it's going to stretch a little bit. You don't want the threads to break, and that'll prevent that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a zigzag stitch on the hem. Now when you do this, you want to catch both the hem and the head part. You're going to put it right down the center of your presser foot, and that's going to give it a really nice finished look. Now I'm slightly pulling to give it that little bit of an extra stretch, not too much. Okay, now the hem is complete. And as you see, there's our zigzag. And you see the nice finish that it shows. There's no extra material that's laying or flipping up. That's the inside of the hat, and here's the outside. And we're using the white thread just for contrast, and you see how it stretches without breaking the threads. Now your next step, you're going to switch your machine to a straight stitch, and this is my preferred method to do the gathering stitch, and after we're done I'm going to show you two other methods. This one creates a channel so that you're going to actually make a channel that you're going to run your thread through and then do the gather. So we do just about a 1/2 inch of an offset, and if you see that, just a 1/2 inch, and we've got the right sides together, and I'm going to do a straight stitch right along the edge, and I use my presser foot as a guide. So I'm going to just catch the edge, and we don't stretch this one, we just sew. And then I just keep placing that so I have about a 1/2 inch of material. Just work your way up the crown. And as you see, I'm just catching the edge. We still have that 1/2 inch. And I'll show you in a minute what we're going to do with that to make the channel. Okay, now we're not going to go all the way to the end. We're going to stop about 1 inch from the top, and that's going to be the hole at the top of the turban to run the band through. So I'm there right now, so I'm going to back stitch and clip my threads. And please always clip your threads nice and close, because if you clip them long, it's going to irritate the patient's head. So we always try to clip them close so they don't have anything that they're wondering what's tickling them on top of their head. Okay, now we've just done the offset. I'm going to straighten it out. I'm going to flatten it, You see it sticking up there. We're going to fold that right over what we just stitched. So let me see if you can see that okay. There's your offset right here where you just stitched, and that's your 1/2 inch. We're going to lay it over the top of that flat, just like that. And now I'm going to put the presser foot right along this stitching, so that'll be my guide. So I've got the stitching here and the presser foot right there, and I'm going to use that for my guide. Just make sure that you don't sew the bottom, the hat gets underneath. We want to make sure that that stays clear, okay? So now we're going to do the channel. So I'm using that presser foot as a guide again, and we're just going to sew right up to that 1 inch opening. And I always try to keep it nice and flat so it doesn't have any puckers. The nice thing about this one is it's not irritating on the patient's head, it's flat. Even though we have a band that will cover it, there's no bulk there. Okay, we're almost up there. Okay, we're at our 1 inch opening, so I'm going to cut the thread. Remember to clip them nice and close. Okay. Now you'll see the channel. This is the right side, the part that goes on the outside of the head. You can see the width of the channel that I just made. And on the other side, you see that it's flat. And that's what we want. We want it to be flat. So even though we're going to do a gathering stitch, it's not going to have a lot of excess material when you gather. So I take a darning needle, and it's fat, and I'm going to take my thread, and normally I use carpet upholstery thread, so it's really heavy, but just for this example I'm going to use my sewing machine thread. And we'll get a knot in this, and I'll show you, we're going to run the needle backwards with the dull side. So let me clip this little bit of a excess thread off the end of the knot. And because this is a very heavy needle, you're going to have to kind of punch it through. It's not as easy as the other needle because it's thick. So I've made a punch through there. And then I'm going to tie it off so that it will stay put. So I'll do that about 3 times. And then we'll run it through and make the gathering stitch. Okay, that's nice and secure. So you see the back of the needle. We've got the thread on it. I'm going to run it right inside that channel. And we're just going to push it all the way through. And be careful, because if depending on your knit material, you might, end up pushing it through the material itself. But either way, it's an easy fix. So as you see, I'm not gathering like with needle stitches. I'm just pushing it through. So now we're at the other end. I pull it out, and I can do my gathering like that. Now, you decide because of the material, on how tight you're going to gather it. The thicker the material, you don't have as tight of a gather, and if it's real thin material, it'll gather too tightly. So every material's different. You've got to judge it. So I'm just going to snug it up. And then I'm going to tie it off on this other end. So I've got to punch it through. And we'll secure it 3 times. Okay. And this is at the very top where we're going to put the band through the hole. And I'm going to snip that thread. And then I'm going to show you what a nice job this does. So I always stretch out the material where it's gathered, so I straighten my channel again. So you see how the channel's straight? And then this is the front. It's a very nice look. So now we're ready for our band. Now the band, we're going to do a 3/8 inch stitch width on the side. So we're just going to fold it over in half, and we're going to stitch that together with a straight stitch. We don't have to stretch it or anything. This one's very simple. So this is our straight stitch. Just make sure your material's laying the way you want it to. And we're ready to clip our seam, our threads. And now we've got to turn this right side out. Okay, I use a safety pin. Some people have a special tool for that, but this works fine, and most people have safety pins in their houses. So I'm going to run this safety pin through. The pin works good if you have a wide width. If you have a really narrow band for any reason, you might want the tool. The tool's just a long skinny hook that you can feed through it. But this material is very, like I said, it's a very forgiving material, soft knit. So there, now I've got it right side out. I unhook my pin, straighten it out. Now I always have the seam on the back side, or it'll be on the inside of the band. So we're going to take our turban and we're going to push this through the 1-inch hole at the top. And then we're going to bring the band together. Make sure that that seam is in the center, because that way your band is nice and straight, it's not twisted. So I've got both sides together according to the seam. And that would be right sides together because that seam's going to be on the bottom. And we're going to straight stitch that. Now to determine, I'm just going to stitch it real quick. I've got about 1 inch there. You almost always have to cut some excess off the band. The band is usually too long. And the way to determine that, I'll show you as soon as I finish this. I like to anchor it so that when I'm pulling on it, it stays put. So I determine it by the gathering. Here's our gathering seam that's going to go up the center of the head, and here's our band. So I put my fingers in the band and pull on it just like that. And then I determine the length of this gathering. Is it going to be too long? If it's too much excess, it'll flop on the head. So I've got this one. I think I'm going to shorten it just a little bit more. As you see, there's my seam right here. And then when I pull it, you see that the gathering is clear up here. So I'm going to do another stitch right about there so that this band isn't too long. And then we'll clip it off. And like I said, every material is different. If you've made a really tight gather, your band might be short. And I always double stitch it. This knit material doesn't fray, so you don't have to worry about anchoring it or anything, or zigzagging or serging it. So I'm going to clip it off really close to my threads. As you see, it's very short. And now I'm going to flip it over. This is the right side of the band. Now, to determine, this is technically done, but we want everything to be nice and secure so that when the patient puts it on, it goes on lickety-split with no problems. We don't want the band on the side of their head and when it should be on the center. So what I do is I pull the seam where we just seamed this band up close to the opening at the top, that 1-inch hole, and I'm going to tack it there. So I always pin it just so it stays where I want it to be, and now I'm going to tack it, and I just use a small zigzag stitch, and I put my feed dogs down so that my machine stays put, and that way I'm tacking it with my sewing machine and not with the needle and thread. So I'm going to tack it right there, and you only have to do it 4, 5, 6 times back and forth, and that's good enough. Make sure you cut your threads close. And take the pin out. Okay, so now we have it tacked up here at the top of the head where the band is going through the 1-inch hole. We're going to straighten our band and then pull that gathering down, that center gathering seam. So there's your gathering seam down the center. Here's the end of your band. You've got it squared off and tight. And now I'm going to lay that down and double check. That looks right. It looks like it's going to be even, nice and straight. So I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to push my, excuse me just a moment. I lost my spot. There we go. I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to push this underneath with the feed dogs down, the small zigzag on, and stitch it very quickly. Just a few short stitches and I'm done. Now these are on the inside of the hat, of the turban, so that they don't show. And that way, if they want to run a scarf underneath of this for decoration, they can, and there's nothing preventing that. So you have your finished turban right there. It's complete. So if you have any questions, you can get a hold of me through our website, and I'll help you any way I can. Thanks.